Time spent in preparation is always time well spent, often lives well saved, sometimes even the difference between success and failure.
Today's video I've got a very special guest. It's a good friend of mine, Tom, also known as Prepared Pathfinder, and he came all the way over to the States from the UK. Now for those of you who don't know, Tom has a wealth of military experience and I will let him introduce himself to you guys.
Hi guys, yeah, my name's Tom. I served for the UK military for a total of 33 years. That's broken down into 25 years regular and 8 years in the reserves. Served in the Parachute Regiment and mainly in the Pathfinder Platoon, which is an airborne reconnaissance unit. Served operationally 7 times in different places around the world and lots of other different places on exercises and trips away.
Yeah, fantastic. So for all you guys that love Recce, you have the master here himself to teach you, and today's video is going to be Tom's going to take us through every stage of a Recce operation. As you just heard him say, you're in the Pathfinder platoon, and what was your main job?
So I was there for quite a long time. I was there for 12 years. I started off as just basically one of the soldiers in the patrol. So started off as a communicator, so a signal guy. Also worked as a medic, lead scout. Later came back as a patrol commander and a platoon sergeant. I was also in charge of the air side of things, so all air operations within the platoon. So that includes helicopter stuff like abseiling and helicopter operations, and also in charge of all the parachuting stuff in the platoon as well. So that included all the high altitude things like the Halo and Hey-Ho, military tandem, as well as the static line parachute operations. I was also a forward air controller, also known as a JTAC, so responsible for delivering munitions and guiding aircraft and dropping weapons onto targets. So quite a lot of different kind of roles within the unit.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, guys, so Tom is the man you've all been looking for. Check out his channel, Prepared Pathfinder, an absolute wealth of knowledge. So with that, Tom's going to take us through all of his experience and really planning that reconnaissance operation. We're going to have a fictitious operation today that myself and Tom are going to plan, but I'm going to be standing back for this one, guys. Tom's going to be taking the reins, and I'm going to allow him to just teach you guys, because there's no mentor better than Tom, and I'm so glad that he's here. So please check out his channel, Prepared Pathfinder. I'm going to put a link to that below. So with that, let's get into it.
Cool, let's do it.
We spoke about a fictitious mission. Tom's got the mission here, so let's go through what this reconnaissance operation is going to be based on, starting with what you're doing and why you're doing it in the first place. So for today, our mission is
okay. So just a little bit of an intro as well then. When you're carrying out a reconnaissance mission, it's basically to gather information. That's what reconnaissance means. And one of the main priorities is you don't get compromised, okay? So everyone thinking, it's really sexy being a reconnaissance soldier and carrying out recce, or recon as you call it in America, but it's not. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of awfully hard work, painstaking work. It's not about basically cutting around and shooting the enemy up. It's about being unseen, unheard, and gathering information, which is actually pretty tough when you're out in the wilderness. So our mission that we're going to have then, our scenario is that a group of British soldiers have been captured by an enemy unit. They're being held captive out in the woods somewhere. We don't know where in this foreign country. We don't have any presence in the country, so what we've got to do a strategic insert. That means going from one part of the world into another part of the world. Okay, so you're going from a friendly country, the closest you can get, and then you're going to do all your planning and preparation in that country, and then move across long distances and insert in some way that's going to be covert, so you're not going to be picked up by the enemy. From that point then, we're going to patrol covertly to a point where we can observe the target. That would be either an OP and or a close target recce. Gather as much information as we can about that target, pull back, observe the target, report the information back to friendly forces to enable them to start planning a rescue mission to come and get those friendly forces back. So that's the scenario that we're going to work for today.
Fantastic. So with that, we've got a scenario. Let's take it from stage one, how we're actually going to plan and conduct that operation. So what's the first thing that we're going to be doing?
All right then, so before we even start our mission planning process, as much information that we can get needs to be gathered about the target. So that will be using satellites, aerial photography, it could be using local people, you could even be, inserting, agents into the area, just to gather that sort of large hand information about what's going on. So potential areas at least, if not an actual location, and maybe some sort of hint as to what capabilities the enemy have got, whether that's strengths, whether that's weapons, vehicles, any kind of devices they might have like infrared, TI, whether they've got drones or any kind of air capability. That's obviously the information that we want to gather more accurately once we're on the ground with the Mark 1 human eyeball. But we want to get that information first so that we can make a little bit of an assessment of how we're going to conduct our operation. Once we've got a little bit, with as much information as we can at least anyway, we then can start the orders process. So the unit that's going to deploy onto the ground, the commander of that unit is basically going to prepare his orders, and that's going to consist of certain headings, and each one of those headings has a lot of information in there to enable each one of the soldiers within that unit to understand their jobs, to the letter, and how they're going to be able to react to certain situations when it occurs, okay? So the first heading's ground. So the ground meaning what the scenario, what the actual ground is going to be like. So the sort of terrain you're going to face, what kind of tracks and roads are in the area, what the going's like underfoot, is it marshy, is it desert? So that then informs you as to how you're going to prepare your personal kit and your equipment for the operation. The next one's a situation, and the situation is breaking into two sections. That's situation enemy forces and situation friendly forces. So what are the enemy, who are the enemy, what are their capabilities? And friendly forces, what are our friendly forces doing? So are there any friendly forces deployed on the area? Have we got any friendly forces detached off slightly off to the flank, say, if there was a carrier group in the area ready to support us if we got into trouble, that sort of thing. So that's your situation, enemy forces and friendly forces. So next one is your mission. When you're given your mission, it's a brief statement. So for this mission here, the patrol's mission is to gather information about the enemy forces and the hostages in order to enable a hostage rescue. So a very brief and to the point statement, and it's repeated as well. So you say it once, pause, say it twice, and it's a very brief to the point statement so that everyone understands what the end state wants to be, okay?
So when you say that, if we're given the opportunity to rescue as hostages, that's not happening because it's not in the brief.
Absolutely not, no.
Okay.
So the meat on the bones is given in the next paragraph, but the actual mission statement is there, and if it's not included in the mission statement, then you're not going to be doing it. And as a small reconnaissance patrol, there's no way that you're going to be able to do that kind of thing anyway.
Okay.
You're there to enable further operations. So after that, then you've got execution, and execution means how you're going to do your job. So all the information is going to be in there. It'll be broken down into phases. So the first one, for example, would be how you're going to insert into the operation. So will that be by boat? Will it by vehicle? Will it by helicopter? Will it be by air? And in this situation, what we're going to go for is a halo insertion, because we've got no friendly forces in the local area, even in the surrounding countries. So what we're going to have to do is do a strategic insertion. That means, over a long distance, and actually do a nighttime insertion by parachute at high altitude, meaning that the enemy won't even see or hear us coming. And in this kind of situation, you'd insert a few kilometres away, so you're not landing anywhere near them. They can't see you even at night. Say 5 k's or so away, you'd hide your parachutes away, you'd bury them, and then move off from there into your observation post or close target recce. So it's broken down into phases. Each one of those phases is titled, and within each one of those phases, you've got detailed information of how you're going to conduct each phase of the operation. The last phase being how you're going to actually exfil from the area, how you're going to extract. Are you going to stay there until the friendly forces come in to conduct the hostage rescue, or are you going to extract before that, and how are you going to do it, that sort of thing. Right, the next heading for the orders then is service support. Service support is basically all your logistics for the operation. So what each soldier needs to carry, what you need to carry as team equipment, so things like radios and stuff, things like maybe breaching charges if you was doing that sort of operation, whether you was going into buildings, night vision devices, TI, anything, any sort of equipment, so that nothing's left to chance. Everyone knows what they're supposed to carry, what they need to prep, and also, you know, unusual kit, stuff that you might not normally carry as part of your patrol kit, you know. For example, ladders, you know, if you was doing some sort of fibula operation in buildings, you might need to carry ladders, you know, and all that sort of unusual stuff. So there's no surprises, and everyone's totally understood of how they're going to operate. And it also includes things like rations and water and stuff, because that then, you know, has a massive knock-on effect to, you know, how you're going to pack your kit. If you've got to carry, for example, 2 weeks worth of rations, which I've done in real life, it is an amazing amount of weight, and that'll, you know, that's going to have a big knock-on effect of how slow and how fast you're going to be able to move with that amount of weight on your back. So that's your service support. The next heading then is command and signal. So chain of command within your patrol or within your platoon, and then chain of command going up the way as well, outside, external to your unit. And then the signal part of it is all your radio stuff. So what radios you're going to carry, if you've got sched times, that's scheduled timings between the day, what time are they going to be, any passwords, any code words, radio checks, make sure you've got enough batteries for your radios, all that sort of thing. So everything's covered in absolute detail. Once you've finished all those headings, then the commander is basically going to give a summary of the entire operation in sort of wide, broad terms. Okay, at 10 o'clock on Monday, we're going to parachute into this area here. From there, we're going to bury our parachutes. Then we're going to move off for 5 kilometres to our OP location, approximately this area, which we'll confirm on the ground. We'll then observe the target for however many days we need to observe it for. At some point on orders, I'm going to send out a close target recce to gather further information, more detailed information. And after however many days, whatever it's given as, say 7 days, we're going to extract to HLS to be extracted, ready for the main force to be inserted into that operation. That's like a summary of the whole set of orders. So once you finish your set of orders, you should totally understand exactly how you're going to conduct your operation, any actions on, so anything that's going to happen, how you're going to respond to it, whether that's a casualty, whether that's being ambushed, whether that's you getting to your objective and the objective being empty, nobody's there, you know, how you're going to respond to things and how the whole thing's going to work. That's all covered in your orders.
Fantastic. So, yeah, guys, with that, let's get into the next phase, which is
preparation for the mission.
Preparation. Right, Tom. So we spoke about all the orders, and now we're into the preparation phase. We've gotten kitted up a little bit. We've got our kit ready. Talk us through again for us Recce Patrol guys, all the key considerations when it comes to preparing for something like this and what you're looking for.
Okay, yeah, and so from the orders, all your information comes from that. So things like what equipment you need, how much rations you're going to need, how much water you're going to need, what type of ammunition and how much ammunition you're going to need, types of weapons, and any specialist equipment. So the patrol commander basically speaks to the 2IC, it's the 2IC, second in command, it's his job for logistics. The commander does the planning, he gives the orders, and it's the second in command of the patrol that actually puts into motion all the logistics for the patrol. So he'll then collect rations for the patrol, however many days that you need, make sure that everyone's got enough water, collects the ammunition and distributes it. And there's all different ammunition types. It's not just rifle ammunition. You're going to be talking HE grenades, FOS grenades, possibly 66 anti-tank weapons. I mean, you know, you could be deploying on an anti-armor ambush. So if you were, you're definitely going to need things like your javelins, NLAWs or whatever anti-tank weapons you're going to need. And as I said before, if you're going to be on an urban operation like Fibula or something, then you could potentially need breaching charges, you're going to be needing ladders and stuff like that. But, you know, for a recce operation, then you're going to need your OP kits, you're going to need viewing devices, things like scopes, maybe binoculars. You're going to need night vision of various types, TI, and equipment for making an observation post if that's what your task is. So things like chicken wire, camouflage nets, a tarpaulin to make the roof of an OP, shovels to dig out an OP, and make sure that all your kit is appropriately camouflaged for the terrain and environment that you're going to be in. As you can see here, I'm wearing a tiger stripe uniform, which is actually pretty good for the greenery that we're going to be operating in. MTP is generally a little bit too light. There might be some areas that's going to be lightish, but MTP tends to be a little bit too light in these heavily forested areas. So as part of the information that you get in your orders, in the ground paragraph, that will dictate as to how you prepare some of your equipment, depending on the environment that you're going to be operating in. So with your personal equipment then, radios, really important that they're checked and double checked, that you've got the right frequencies, that you've got the right radio batteries, as in, when I say right ones, charged, fully charged, and spare batteries for however long you're going to be out there. And if you're out there for a long time, if you were out there for 2 weeks, then you've got to take a lot of batteries, so that's a lot of weight. The right type of radios as well, so you've got inter-patrol comms, you've got comms for talking to other patrols potentially if they're in the area. Then you may have to carry a VHF radio to talk to friendly forces when they arrive on the ground, a UHF radio to talk to aircraft, because you may be conducting part of the initial airstrikes and support for the operation from your OP as the friendly troops come in. So there's loads of different types of radios as well. You could be using TACSAT radios as well. Making sure you've got all the right frequencies, all the right batteries, all the charged up stuff, and it all works and radio checked. So that's just radios. Then you've got your patrol equipment. So the medic's going to have a fully packed medical bag. There could be demolitions kit that needs to be prepped and packed. And then all your, as I mentioned before, all your night vision devices and TI and stuff like that. There's a lot of kit to think about. You know, that's just your preparation of your kit. Your weapons obviously need to be prepared. You know, if they're not already clean, they need to be cleaned and oiled. You're probably going to want to do a check zero on your weapons and a test fire. If you're in the environment where you can do that, definitely a sort of thing that you're going to want to do before you deploy on an operation. So that's all part of your preparation, and then you go into your physical preparations of carrying out all your practices, all your rehearsals of what you're going to do. So for the operation we're going to be doing, we'd be practicing basically how we're going to occupy an OP and going through the skills and drills of carrying out a close target recce of that target. And whatever other rehearsals are deemed necessary for your operation, you're going to want to make sure that everyone's on the same song sheet. Because when people start shooting at you and things start going loud, everyone wants to be working on the same song sheet and not running around like headless chickens.
So Tom, you're mentioning all these specialized roles, and that can sound really complicated to a lot of new guys.
Yep.
And right now, especially for people on the civilian side that might not have access to a team, but have a group of friends that are trying to do this on their own, or it's a hobby, or they're just interested in learning the skills, how important is it to have individuals that are specialized in medicine, radios, communication, planning, whatever skills that you mentioned? What do you recommend for people, and what's the importance of that within a team?
Yeah, so it's absolutely critical, because if you are working as a reconnaissance unit, and then you're basically working in a small team, and there's no room for deadwood or any sort of for people just be along as passengers. Every single person needs to be 100% contributing towards the effort for the goal, and they need to be absolutely super professional at their role, whatever that role is. So within a patrol, you do have a specialised role, as you just mentioned there. Communications is one of the most important ones. As the saying goes, no comms, no bombs, right? And if you were doing a reconnaissance operation, and you can't communicate that information back to HQ, however far that is, it could be the other side of the world, then there's no point in you being there. It's pointless. And if you get rumbled, if you get compromised, and you can't tell HQ that you're in trouble, again, you're pretty much dead meat. Especially if you're on the other side of the world, then you're done. So the communications is probably the most critical aspect of the entire operation, especially when you're talking about anything that's special forces orientated stuff. So that's really important. And it's not just a communicator, everybody needs to be trained on whatever radios you're carrying. And as I mentioned, it could be a whole myriad of different types of radios. So everyone needs to be 100% familiar with them and know how to operate them. But it becomes the specialisation of one person to do that. So the same is true with medical. Hopefully you're not going to have to use your medical skills, but hope is not a plan. So if someone was to get injured, and that could be by just on the insertion, there's things called non-combat injuries that happen in Afghanistan all the time. You're carrying so much kit, you're jumping over gaps in ditches, you're climbing over walls. Guys, they get injured quite often, hernias, broken bones, all sorts of things. The medic is really, really important to be able to stabilise that casualty until you can get them back to further aid. And then obviously you've got the enemy action, so you could have IEDs, you could have mines, you could get shot. It's that medic's responsibility to keep that casualty breathing up until they can get evacuated, casevac back to friendly forces. And again, it could be the medic that gets hit. So everyone needs to have a high degree of medical training within a small team. Things like demolitions, everyone will have a working knowledge of demolitions, but there'll be one person within the patrol that is the expert on that. So how to create IEDs, how to make improvised claymores, how to make breaching charges to get into buildings, all that sort of thing. That will be that person's speciality, but everyone else will have a working knowledge on how to make those sort of things and how to create explosive devices should you need to do so. Going on from the comms a little bit, there'll be one person, and this is one thing that isn't quite shared as much as everyone else. If you've got someone that's trained as a JTAC, stroke FAC, forward air controller, generally that person is the only one that can really complete that task, because it's very, very specialised, very, takes an awful and a lot of training to be able to be a decent JTAC. The rest of the patrol will have a little bit of working knowledge of how to do that, how to direct aircraft onto targets, but it's a very sort of specialised role that. So the one guy that's a JTAC, generally, he's the only person that will talk to a radio unless that person gets shot. And then if someone else has to take over, they've got to state on the radio that they're not a trained JTAC. This is emergency close air support, and they'll just give them the information that they need. The pilot will ask them for the information that they need. So all those specialised roles, everyone has their own role, but they also cross-train in each other's roles.
So the reverse from that is we have specialties. What's the number one key skill that you saw throughout your military career that was crucial, that basically made or broke the soldier? So was it discipline, was it fitness, was it rifleman skills, was it patrolling skills? Like, what was that really basic core thing that either made the base soldier who they were? So for the new guy, what's that first skill they should hone in?
I think it's just your basic fieldcraft, really, so all the aspects that make up your fieldcraft. So your patrolling skills, knowing how to react in a contact, things like contact drills, your camouflage concealment, and all your basic drills and skills that go together to make an operation work. Your fieldcraft skills are absolutely crucial to what you're doing.
Fantastic. So now that Tom and I have inserted into the area of operation, we've been patrolling for about 5 kilometers now. Tom's going to explain some considerations when it comes to actively patrolling during a recce operation. So with that, I'm going to give you guys over to Tom, and he's going to explain what he's doing, why, and some tips and tricks.
Okay then guys, so we've inserted into the area of operations. Like I say, for this scenario, with Halo inserted in, so we've done a military freefall from 25,000 feet, and we would have normally done it at last light or first light to mask that insertion. And once we've done that, we'd hide the parachutes, we'd case them, which would probably be picked up at a future time. RV together as a patrol, and then move off on the mission. So at this point, stealth was absolutely paramount, and to ensure that you're not going to be compromised and the enemy have got no idea of you, that you're approaching them. So light and sound discipline is super important. So no lights, no sounds, all the communications done by hand signals. The only time you're going to talk is if you need to pass any kind of detailed information, which shouldn't really be a requirement at this stage. And if you had to do that, you're literally going to go up to the other person and whisper in their ear right next to their head to reduce that sound signature. So everything on your body needs to be camouflaged. You noticed I've rolled my sleeves down now, which is covering my watch, so there's no glint off my watch. I'm not wearing sunglasses, and everything on me is either covered up or camouflaged. As you're moving through the foliage, you can see here, it needs to be super silent. So as you're patrolling, as you place your feet, you need to be super careful not to break leaves like that, okay? So just super gentle and silent the whole time you're moving. As I say, hand signals are used all the time. If you're going to stop for a listening halt, which is a good idea to do in certain bounds of the operation, just stop, look, listen and smell, and look for the enemy and smell if there's any unusual smells and stuff. In an area like this, in complex vegetation, often you can smell something before you can see it. So if an enemy was, say, at a campfire and there was cooking, you'd definitely smell that before you could see them. So you have those listening and smell halts at certain points during your patrol. And if at any point you had something that was an incident, then you're going to revert back to your orders of your actions on. So actions on light, if it was a tripwire with a flare, pick it, you're going to kick it over and then exfil out the area, reorg and then move off again. If it was a parachute flare, they might just be putting them up to illuminate the area randomly. So that in that situation, what you probably want to do is just stand still and not move. Or if you see it before it pops, then just get down to the ground slowly and lay still. If you was ambushed, obviously it's all gone loud then anyway, and what you need to do is fight through the ambush, try and defeat the enemy and then do a quick reorg and get the hell out of Dodge. And at that point, if you was on a reconnaissance operation, that mission's finished. At that point, you're basically going to be exfilling out and escaping evasion away from the area. So there's just a few points, considerations to think about when you're going to be doing an operation like this. And it is, as I said at the start, reconnaissance soldiering is not this super sexy thing that everyone thinks it is. It's a whole load of hard work. You can imagine walking through this sort of area here with a lot more weight than I'm carrying. I mean, I've only got probably 50 pound on my back. If you're carrying double that weight, moving at night, really cautiously, really slow, how to navigate, no lights, no talking, for hours and hours and hours on end, maybe days to get to just to start your job. And that's just your infiltration. That's before the work really starts, where you have to use your maximum battle discipline to observe a target whilst being, potentially cold, wet, hungry, and all the rest of it, and just remaining silent and observing a target.
How do you think people should build the discipline to do that?
It all comes just down to practice, just practice and practice, just drills and skills. It's the sort of thing that you can't really, learn to do unless you're doing it, really.
So if you're patrolling days on end, can you explain quickly how to set up to make a camp and you're doing a hard routine and you're in an enemy area? How would you set up a camp? How would you, during your infill to your location?
Yeah, so basically, if you need to stop at any point to rest, depending on how far you've got to go, then you may need to do that. And you're not going to be setting up, big shelters and stuff like that. You need to keep everything as low as possible. If there's no rain, then you probably wouldn't even set up a basher tarp, known in America. So you may just basically, if it's cold enough, you need to get into a sleeping bag or maybe just a poncho liner. You're just literally going to get in and amongst the foliage, as you see around here, get yourself as concealed as possible, but you definitely need to have people on stag, on sentry. In a 6-man patrol, you're probably going to have 2 people on sentry, so that means you're going to get 2 hours sleep to 1 hour sentry, and that's going to be all night. So it's a tiring thing. Hard routine is something that's quite an important point you mentioned there. hard routine is basically upskilling, you know, up to the highest level of soldiering, so that you're reducing your risk of compromise to the very most. So again, coming back to light and sound discipline, no light, virtually no sound, unless you absolutely have to say something to each other. When even just moving your kit around, taking your rucksack off, doing it slowly and laying it on the ground slowly. Even if it's £100 you're laying, it needs to be done nice and slowly so you're not creating noise. It means when you have set up when you've slept overnight, trying to reduce the sign on the ground by brushing the foliage back over it and reducing the sign that you've left. It means potentially pissing in bottles and crapping in containers and carrying it with you, so there's literally no sign of what you've left behind. Definitely not dropping any ration wrappers or sweet wrappers or anything like that. All the rubbish goes with you in a sealable bag in your pack. No cooking. So even if you're in a freezing cold environment and it's raining, you don't get to have hot food, you don't get to have coffee or anything like that. You're literally drinking cold water and eating cold rations. The reason being is, as I mentioned, the smell of cooking can be smelt for a fair way, especially in close environments. So you're reducing your risk of compromise by keeping your skill level super high and not giving any sort of reason to be compromised, any noise or sound of what you're doing. So it's called hard routine for a reason. It's hard.
Absolutely.
But it's the sort of thing that will keep you alive.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Want to continue this patrol?
Yeah, let's do it. So as I'm patrolling then, I'm carefully placing my feet to cause minimum amount of noise. Actually look down to make sure I'm not going to stand anything that's going to make a noise as well. At the same time, what I'm going to be doing is scanning the area. My barrel goes where my eyes go, so that if something pops up, like someone trying to shoot at me, I've got them covered. I'm scanning both near and far distance as well. So like I say, it takes a lot of discipline and quite a bit of skill to maintain this kind of patrolling, especially if you're carrying heavy loads. Another thing you're going to be looking for is any sign. The sign of tracks, sign of booby traps as you're moving as well. Depending on the operational environment and how the enemy operating, this could potentially save your life. Obviously working out in places like Afghanistan, the enemy were heavily involved in sowing IEDs, so every single step that you took was super important. Places like Vietnam obviously as well, the enemy like placing out punji pits and all sorts of nasty traps for you too. So yeah, continue to patrol and trying to avoid making as much noise as you can. Obviously it's not 100% possible, because there's dried leaves everywhere here, but you're going to do the best job you can. And every once in a while you're going to let the guys know behind you that you're going to take a halt. You're going to go to ground using whatever cover you've got available. And just observe and listen for any sign of the enemy.
So now that we're in position, we've got our OP set up. Now obviously we haven't got cover, we haven't dug anything complex, but again guys, this is a lesson of principles, so give us a little bit of grace. We're trying to get you the information. Tom's only here in the States for a few days, so our time's really got short with bringing you guys quality stuff, but with that, We're in OP right now. Tom, what is this stage of the patrol?
Okay, so basically we've patrolled into the area of the OP. What would happen before this stage we'd stop short, we'd send a recce group out first to check out the area of the OP and make sure it's suitable, make sure you've got eyes on, make sure you've got comms, make sure you've got an extraction route and stuff like that. Then you'd move into the OP, you'd carry out some sort of construction, so that might include digging, it may include overhead cover, it may include putting up some sort of camouflage screen in front of the OP, but whatever it is, you need to make sure you're prepared so that you're completely concealed and you've got eyes on the target. From here then you work in shifts, so at least one person is observing the target at any one time, and you take turns in observing, and then someone will be on sentry, so someone will be on protection front, and then another one to the rear as well. So you need at least 4 if not 6 people to carry out an OP. Actually, people think they can do it with 1 or 2. You can't, because you need to have some rest as well. You could be here for a week or even longer, and it takes a massive amount of discipline and skill to be able to maintain that enthusiasm to keep eyes on the target, to gather the information that's essential to your task. So from here all we're doing is staying as still as possible, we're observing the target and making sure we've got protection. Once we've got confirmation, identified the target, so at the moment what we're doing is we're observing a road, and the idea is that the enemy used this, the information we've got is they use this as an MSR, main supply route, for movement to and from their base. So we're not actually getting as close to their base at the moment, we're just OPing the target close to the actual base, and we're confirming their presence. And what we're going to do is see which direction they're moving in. Once we've done that, that will confirm, we'll send that information back to base, and then we can move on to actually carrying out a reconnaissance of their actual location.
Fantastic. So, guys, emphasis there on it takes discipline to get into position, and once you're in position, as Tom said, your job is just starting at that point, correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the main emphasis is, let's say, discipline, but also remaining completely undetected and being able to report that information back, because if you can't do that, if you've got no comms, then there's no point in you even being there in the first place.
And also, when it comes to recce, guys, obviously the threat of thermal drones and air assets are huge nowadays. We did a video on how to counter and mitigate that thermal threat. So Tom, what are some methods for physically collecting that data? Are you using radios, notepads, digital devices? What are some ways that you're physically collecting that information now that we're in this OP?
All of the above, really, to be honest. It depends on what type of information you need. For what we're doing here, it's just a confirmation of the enemy being there on the ground, what direction they're moving on the MSR. So, for that you don't need to record it as such. But once you get into actually observing a campsite, for example, or an enemy camp, then there's a whole load of info that you may be required to record and send. So yeah, you could do it with a dictaphone, an electronic device. You could use it on a notepad. The problem with a notepad is that if you got compromised and caught, that information is written down. So as soon as you record that information, you need to get it passed up the chain of command to your base by radio, and then once you've done that, you need to destroy that information. So if it's written down on a piece of paper, you need to either eat it or burn it, depending on what kind of paper it's written on, so that it's not compromised to the enemy what you're doing.
Fantastic. Right, guys, with that, let's move into exfilling and what to do if we get compromised or bumped. So Tom and I just finished our mission. We observed the enemy, we have the intel we need. Now let's get into how we're going to exfil, and that's going to be split into 2 parts. The first one is exfilling and we haven't been caught. The second one is how to get out once you've been compromised.
So the exfiltration phase of the operation then. And this is one that is probably the most dangerous phase, other than maybe the infiltration, because people, you know, their minds are thinking of getting home, they may be starting to get complacent, they're tired. So it's really important to stay on top of your game at this stage, remain, you know, super disciplined, and actually keep that same discipline going throughout your exfiltration, you know, same as what you've done for the rest of it. So when it comes to moving out of your OP, what you're going to do first is obviously pack all your kit away, leave absolutely nothing to betray your presence. Yes, you might be going, but if the enemy find traces of what you've been there, then it could, you know, compromise the fact that something else is going to happen. They could exfil that themselves, they could bugger off from the area they're in, and actually the follow-up operation to actually rescue the hostages or kill the enemy could fail because you're bad discipline. So you need to pack everything up, leave no trace that you've been there whatsoever, and that includes all your bodily waste as well. Everything needs to go with you. And what you're going to do is patrol out of your OP, not out the front, but out the back into an emergency RV. At that point, you're going to do a complete check of everything. Obviously, you're going to check it as much as you can in the OP, but you're probably going to have a limited space. Once you've got to an RV, the patrol commander makes sure that everyone's got all the kit they came in with, so they haven't dropped anything or left anything. You do a 100% check, and we're not talking about laying all your kit out in front of you, but put your hand on your MVGs, put your hand on your vision device, make sure you've got every single one of your magazines, all those sort of things. Then from there, you're going to move off as silently and stealthily as you possibly can back to your extraction point. Your extraction point could be any one of a means of things. It could be a pickup by a vehicle, by a boat, it could be by helicopter, or it might just be you may be waiting for the main force to arrive, and then you're going to guide them on to the target. You may have even left 2 people in the OP to keep eyes on, to give you right up-to-date information, right up to the point that you actually assault into the target. So, like I say, the main name of the game at this point is continuing those good drills and good discipline.
So we've had a successful extraction, we talked about that, stuff went our way. If stuff doesn't go our way and we're bumped by the enemy or contacted, how do we successfully fight our way out and retreat from our OP back to safety?
Okay, so yeah, if you've had a hard compromise, which is where you've been contacted by the enemy, if you're, you know, they're shooting at you, then you're going to carry out a contact drill. If you're actually in your OP when this happens, then you're going to have claymore mines set out on the most likely enemy areas of approach. So first thing you do is hit those. That's going to hopefully put them off to a degree, give them a bit of a bloody nose at least, if not take them out. And then you're going to basically grab your most sensitive items of equipment. You're not going to grab your Bergens at this stage because you can't run off with 100 pounds on your back. So you're just going to grab the most essential bits of kit, which will be pre-packed in your assault pack or day sack. So it's going to be things like your MVGs, your TI, your radios, that sort of thing. And obviously your fighting order, which you need to fight, which should never leave your body anyway. So you're going to grab your essential kit, and then you're going to fan out into a baseline and then start fighting back. So you're going to operate, if you're in a 4-man patrol, in pairs back out of that killing area, away from the enemy. If you're working as a 6-man patrol, 2 lots of 3, and then at some point what you might do is start peeling left or right to get out of the enemy's axis where they're looking at. So if they're firing into the woods because they've seen you in an area, if you peel left or peel right, it gets you out of the killing zone. So once you've done that, then once you've broken contact with the enemy, you're going to again go to an RV position where you're going to make sure you've got no casualties. If you have, you're going to quickly patch them up, as in quickly, very, very quickly. Make sure you've got all your essential kit and then get the hell out of Dodge. So you're going to move at speed, making sure that the enemy's covered. So move at the best speed you can, but also making sure the enemy's covered. If you've got another claymore mine that hasn't been fired, you can place that on your axis and get that ready to take out any enemy that's following you up as well. And then what you're going to be doing is make it at best speed to your extraction point. I'd suggest you wouldn't be just going at a full out run, but you'd be moving at best speed that you can.
Fantastic. So now that Tom's explained it, we're actually going to show you guys what that looks like out on the range. So let's cut some footage of us actually practicing those drills with live ammunition. Alright guys, so we're out on the range now. We're going to demonstrate, as we just said, the contact drill. So again, Tom's done this. He's going to show you in a reconnaissance form how we're going to you know, initiate that contact drill, break contact, and then peel to exit that. So before we show you guys doing that practically out here on the range, Tom, what are some considerations and what drills are you going to run us through? So talk us through what we're going to do out here today.
Okay, yeah, so just for the reason for being there, the reason for a contact drill is not primarily to inflict casualties on the enemy. It's so you can get out of this killing zone. So as a reconnaissance patrol, especially if you get caught out as a pair, like we're going to reenact here, if you're moving forward to, say, do a CTR, close target reconnaissance, there's no way you're going to be able to take that enemy on, because you could be doing a CTR of a company, of a battalion, or even a bigger unit. So the whole idea is get some rounds down quickly, get the enemy's heads down, hopefully inflict some casualties, but the idea is to get out of their killing zone and get away as quickly as possible, reorganise, get back to the rest of your patrol, and then get out of dodge as quickly as possible. All right. So the idea with this is you don't go forward to the enemy, you go back, and you do that in short bounds. And the reason why you do it in short bounds is because if you take a longer bound, then that guy's going to be hanging out there in the killing zone for longer. And also, if that other person gets a stoppage, then they're sat there as you're running whilst they're trying to clear the stoppage. So you make those bounds nice and short and as quick as possible. The initial contact then is done with the lead scout, who's going to just basically fire 2 rounds quickly, then a single round. After they've fired, they then shout the direction of the contact. Now, I do see people having mistakes with this. They'll see a target or they'll see an enemy and shout first. That's dumb, because basically what you want to do first is kill the enemy if you can. There's no point in shouting your presence, telling them where you are. First thing you want to do is shoot, then shout the direction of the enemy. So contact front, left or right or rear, whatever it may be. Take those 2 initial shots, then a single shot. Then you're waiting for the guy behind you to get into position and start firing. As soon as they're firing, then the guy behind you, that's the signal for the lead scout to turn, safety catch on, move back, run back as in that short bound, get down and start firing. And once that bound has been done and you're firing, then that's the signal for the guy at the front now, who was the second guy, to get up, move, down and fire. And you just keep doing that until you're at a point where you're either out of contact, or you can get to a point where you can then peel left or right, because there may be some better cover to your left or your right, like there is here today. There's a tree line here, so the idea is you've got cover from view and then hopefully get into some cover from fire. Once you get out of the contact zone, then you want to break contact, so you let the other guy know you're out of contact. There's no point in firing just for the sake of it, especially if you can't see anything, because you could potentially have a blue on blue. This could be happening at night, you could be in the jungle, so it's not going to be potentially open ground. So as soon as you're out of contact to the enemy, if they're not shooting at you, or if you've got a piece of cover in front of you that's hiding you, shielding you from the enemy, then you break contact, you go silent, you continue moving in bounds just in case the enemy pops up, until you get to the point where you can then go into what's called a rally point, where you take stock of what's going on. You basically check each other, make sure nobody's a casualty, and if there is, you quickly treat it. You make sure you've got all your mission essential kit, get a new magazine on your weapon, and then get out of it, get back to your patrol.
Fantastic. So what are some, so we're going to start with contacting the enemy. You spoke through that. We're going to say contact, we retreat, and then we'll get into better cover, and then we're rallying. So those are kind of, would you say, the 3 stages of breaking that up?
Yeah, pretty much,
okay.
Yeah.
What are some things that you see guys get wrong often during this type of exercise?
Yeah, so I mentioned the initial contact, people shouting before they're firing. Mm-hmm. Again, what they're doing is they're alerting the enemy if they haven't potentially seen. If you've seen them and they haven't seen you, there's no point shouting it. Right. Another thing is moving forward instead of coming back. Sometimes people get into this mindset, like normal infantry soldiers are always assaulting forward.
Aggressive, yep.
Yeah, so in this circumstance, you don't want to be going forward at all. You want to be moving back up cover.
And actually, that was a mistake that I made when we first did this drill. My aggressive infantry mindset, I came forward up to you, and it was that reminder of, no, we're doing a Recce Patrol, we've got to step back, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that was my natural inclination, was, let's form that aggressive firing line, get more guns up front.
Yeah.
But it's a totally different philosophy here, guys.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, because you're walking on unknown ground. So even if you think it's a good idea to get that weapon up on a baseline, you could be stepping on a landmine. So you're moving forward on unknown ground.
Yeah.
There could be an IED, a landmine, or you could be moving into someone else's line of fire that you haven't already seen. So the fact that that person hasn't been contacted yet means he's not safe, but he's in a better area than he potentially could be. Right. So yeah, you never move forward. Another thing is just too much shouting going on. You don't need to shout if you don't need to. The fact that someone's firing and they're behind you is your signal to move. I do see a lot of this, like move, you know, move now and on, moving. You don't need to tell them that, because if you're moving, the guy behind you can see you moving anyway. And if you're firing already, that's a signal for the guy to move. If a guy doesn't move and you're already firing, that's when you shout move.
Right.
But once you're a well-oiled machine, you've practiced this a few times, there should be no reason to shout these things to tell people to move, because it's obvious.
Right.
The other guy's firing, that means you're moving.
Right.
Okay? Stoppages, if you have a stoppage at any time, if you're kneeling down or if you're in a fire position of any kind and you're firing and you have a stoppage, if you're in a 4-man team or a 6-man team, you basically get up, move, clear your stoppage on the move, okay, no matter where you are, because there's no point being in an enemy's kill zone and clearing a stoppage. So you want to try and clear your stoppages on the move. In a 2-man drill, it might be slightly different, because if you've only got 2 people and you just get up and run, the other guy could potentially be left with his ass in the wind. So it may be an idea to just go to cover slightly, quickly change that magazine, and then get up and get firing again. So yeah, stoppages you need to do on the move if you can, definitely. And I had one on the drill we did practice on before.
Right, and they're going to see that. You guys will see that when you watch the footage. Some other notes for you guys out there is, bear in mind, we're constrained with our space here, so comments about us being further away, we know that we're bounding short distances, we know we're almost shoulder to shoulder. There's no cover here. This is a demonstration, again, to show you guys the drills. So, understand we're going to be closer together with the camera work and angles. We wanted to fit in what it looks like, but bear in mind this is going to be spaced out. You're going to be using cover, and on nice flat open ground, it's hard to simulate that, but it's very hard to film that for you guys. So understand that what you've seen is instructional. Everything's kind of compressed space-wise.
Yeah.
So
it's just to show the mechanics. It's not to show the entire tactics of everything. But it works quite well, and the drills are actually going to be bang on for what it should be.
Exactly. And the last thing I want to add is, and you'll see this, is we are shooting at a target. We're going to show what that target looks like at the end of the drill to see that you're combining all this, but you've still got to be accurate with that weapon system.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, again, knowing your zeros and stuff like that. I handed Tom this weapon yesterday, and he's hitting every round on target at an unknown distance, which is very impressive.
Cheers, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no point just scaring the enemy. You want to suppress him, but you want to try and kill him as well.
Exactly.
Because if that enemy's aiming his weapon at you, you want to try and drop him. Well, you want to drop him.
Exactly.
Cool.
Sweet. Let's do it. So it doesn't mean anything if you can't hit the target, right?
Absolutely. And that was a fresh target there, okay guys? So that was contact drill where we're moving fast and having to, get rounds down, move quick, try and get out of contact zone, killing zone, and there we go. We smashed the enemy in the process.
So there you have it, guys. That was the contact drill. So that's what you're going to do when you've been contacted by the enemy and break away. And again, it's an absolute pleasure to train that with you, Tom, using live ammunition out here. Guys, that is a extremely brief intro to a full Recce Patrol from honestly one of the most knowledgeable guys on the subject that I personally know and that I've had the pleasure to introduce to you guys. Where can you find Tom? Over at Prepared Pathfinder. Again, guys, give him a follow, give him support. Tom sells some really cool patches and shirts. Again, I don't advertise stuff on this channel, but Tom is 100% a stand-up lad and worth supporting. So, Tom, thank you so much for coming out today and sharing your knowledge with everyone on this channel.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the opportunity you've given me to get out, loaning me your weapons and getting out on the range and having a good time. And getting out into this area here is quite nice as well. Really appreciate it. The sun's just starting to go down now, and it's just a lovely area. But yeah, it's recce patrolling. It's not that sexy, cool thing that everyone thinks it is. It's actually really hard work, and it takes an awful lot of discipline and good soldiering skills to actually do it properly, and in real life do it without getting compromised and getting killed. Okay, so just a few things from what we've done there. Like I say, soldiering skills needs to be really important. Things like hard routine takes a lot of work to actually do properly. Maintaining those discipline levels throughout extended periods of operations, it's very tough, and I've done it for real, not just on exercises but on operations all around the world. So for anyone watching this, this is just a very brief, as mentioned, very brief insight into it. It's a lot more detailed and there's a lot more to it, but there's only so much you can cover in the short video. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, I look forward to doing some more stuff with you again in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Last thing for the guys, Tom, what's some advice that you'd give to a young man who's looking to do this stuff, or maybe he's in his teen years? You've got that young kid. You're a very accomplished, successful guy. You've done a lot in your life. What's some advice you'd give to that young man?
I'd say, if you want to join the military and you want to do this kind of thing, firstly, if you're in the UK, join the cadets, join the Army cadets or the Marine cadets, and they'll give you an absolutely fantastic base, a grounding for this kind of thing. I joined the cadets when I was 13. Yeah. I stayed in the cadets until I was 16. I joined the Army at that age. Mm. It gave me a lot of confidence, a lot of life skills, and a lot of military base skills as well. And you did as well, didn't you?
Absolutely, joined at 13 and then on to 16, yep.
Cool. So, that sort of thing, I know you don't have the exact same equivalent in the US, but in the UK, that's definitely a great thing to do. Also, train hard. So it's not an easy fix joining the Army, especially if you want to join something like the Parachute Regiment or the Marines. It's not an easy fix, okay? You've got to train hard for it. There's no guarantee that you'll get in just because you've joined it initially. The training's hard. You go through a selection course, a lot of physical tests. So make sure you're the best you can be before you even try and attempt to do this sort of thing. But don't be put off by that. Just put that groundwork in. Like I did, I started training when I was 14, started running to school every single day and back to make sure I was ready for when I joined at 16. But what it will give you, if you do go for it and you are successful at passing those courses, it will give you an absolute awesome time in the military. I love my time. Went all around the world, did lots of freaking awesome stuff. Jumped out of planes, abseiling out of helicopters, shot all kinds of crazy guns. Went on operations, all over the world, doing lots of great things. Done 4,500 jumps, halo, hey-ho, nighttime, over the sea, all sorts of stuff. So it gives you opportunities that you'll never get outside of the military. So if you are wanting to do this kind of thing, just go for it.
I love it. Tom, thank you so much again, mate.
Cheers.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.